When finding the domain and range of a certain set of data or a relation, you have to remember a couple things. So first, you have to remember that domain, that's your x values. Range is your y values. Oh my goodness. Cannot write today. There we go. All right. And so that's the main thing you have to remember. But when you list them, you're going to have to remember some other things, okay? So typically in this class, when we list our x and y values, we will be listing them in order, so go ahead and get used to that. But the main thing, the main other thing with domain and range, when you're listing them, is you cannot repeat values, okay? So let's go ahead and get into our first example, and you'll see what I mean. So when we're looking at this, it could be presented to us in different ways, so I'm going to do an example of each. But when we're listing out our domain, you're going to start by writing domain. And when it's discrete data, in other words, discrete data are kind of like just coordinates, or if it's like a graph, it'll be points on a graph. When it's listed like that, you're going to want to write your domain and range in brackets, okay? So I'm going to write my domain first. So I'm going to write the brackets, and so it kind of looks like a sideways bird. That's the way I think about it, okay? And so when I list the domain, I'm going to look for my x values. So my x value here would be -1. My x value here is 4. The x value here is 4, and then the x value here is 10. So remember, the x values are like that first part of your ordered pair, okay? So when I list them, it would be -1, 4, and then like I was saying, do you see how the 4 is repeated? You do not repeat it. So that's the thing that you have to remember, okay? So let's go down here and let's make sure that we write a little note to ourselves. Do not repeat values when listing the domain and range. And listing the domain and range. Okay, so that's the main thing that you have to remember, and then you'll be good. All right, so we just won't repeat that 4, and then we have a 10, and then that's everything. So I'm going to close my bracket, and that's the domain. Okay, so now the range, that's your y values. So that means you have to go in and list your y values. Okay, and so remember, like I said, we will, in this class, typically write them in order. This is not actually a requirement, but just so that we're together, we'll write them in order. So my y values would be, we got a 3, a 0, a 7, and then a 12. Because remember, it's the second part of your ordered pair, okay? And so I'm going to just simply write them in order. So the smallest number would be 0. The next biggest would be 3, and then we have 7, and then we have 12, and then that's all of them. So that's the range, and we didn't have any repeated values, so we didn't have to worry about that part. And so there is your domain and range. So that's if it's given to you as coordinates or ordered pairs. And so what if it's given to you as a table? It actually is way easier when it's a table because it kind of has it organized for you already. So if we were writing the domain, and I'll just put, you can put like a D for domain, and that's fine. We're going to put our bracket, and then I'm going to list my domain. And now, again, I want you to list them in order. So we got 3, 6, 4, and 7. So I'm going to start with the smallest number. We got 3, and then the next one would be 4. And then 6, and then 7. Oh, didn't mean to do that. And I'm going to close my bracket. All right, so then the range would be the y value. So the smallest one would be 1.2. Then we have 1.5, and then 2, and then 4. So there's my domain and range for that table. Okay, so now what if it gives it to you as a graph? Well, you can go off of the graph. Some people have trouble going off of the graph, and so if you are one of those people that have a little bit of a harder time just getting your information from the graph, you can write down the coordinates on the graph, or you can list them out to the side. Either way is fine. For me, it does help to list them to the side, so I just start with my first point and I write down the coordinate of it. So remember, this is your x-axis, that's your y-axis. So this coordinate right here, I'd have to go to 1 on the x-axis and then up to 3. So it'd be 1, 3. The next one would be 2, 1. And then we have 3, negative 1. And then 4, 2. And then 5, 0. And then the last one we have 6, 6. All right, so then from there, now I can just very easily kind of take my x values and write them down, and then just make sure that if there are any repeated ones, you don't repeat them. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Oh, wow, that was easy. So there's no repeated ones, so all I have to do is just list them out. All right, and then we have the range. So the range, we've got the 3, 1, negative 1, 2, 0, and 6. And again, I'm going to list them in order. So the smallest one would be negative 1. And then we have a 0. And then a 1. A 2. And make sure you don't miss one. So if you need to mark them out as you go, you can. Then we have a 3. And then we have a 6. And one thing you can do to make sure you didn't miss one is you can count how many points there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it should match it unless there was repeated ones. And so I know that for sure I didn't miss one because there's no repeated ones. So there you go. There's domain and range of discrete relations.